Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Pink Pill. I am your host, Jamie Lynn, and I have Joshua Knox here with me today. Welcome, Joshua.
Hi, thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. It's nice to meet you in person. We kind of connected via Instagram. Actually, one of my girlfriends sent me your IG, and I was like, oh, I have to have him on. He's
It was
great.
probably after that masculinity video that I made, right?
I think so. Did that video do pretty well for you?
Yeah, because the intro said, do you want more orgasms in your relationship?
Oh, well, I don't know many people that would turn that shit down, right?
Right,
men or women, right?
I'm gonna go in, and then the guys are like, oh, this is different.
So you are a fitness coach and a mindset coach, right?
Yeah.
And you have a lot of videos about masculinity, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to kind of pick your brain about that a little bit because I think I just did a video about femininity, and I thought it'd be good to kind of balance it out with what masculinity is, and I wanted to kind of start off a little hot, actually.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, we'll just jump right in.
Yeah.
Do you feel like guys are losing some masculinity?
So I thought about this quite a bit on the drive here, and I think the biggest issue is not the masculinity. It's actually they have wounded feminine almost
Tell
often.
me a little, what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, so a wounded feminine is someone who is always searching for validation. They have extreme dumps of emotion. Their emotions are always varying. They are insecure. So we see people that, we're like, oh, their masculine is not very strong. They don't have masculine. And it's more often that they have a wounded feminine, where wounded masculine is like they have anger, they have uncontrollable, they can't control their emotions. They're not very clear on their path. And so I think that a lot of people do have a healthy masculine. They are humble and they are leaders, but they're so insecure that they search for other things.
Is this just something that's that only the male gender can get the wounded feminine, or can a female also be wounded feminine?
No, definitely females too. I think it's more commonly spoken about for females.
Okay.
We generalize femininity and masculinity as like women and men, but which is not the case at all.
It's energy, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think in today we talk a lot more about masculinity in women. That's something that's been talked about more.
That's a hot topic, man.
Yeah.
I've been really kind of digging at that one. And that was a lot of what my show was about last week, was really kind of challenging that, because I think there was a big misconception about masculinity in women, and they were misrepresenting strength as masculine. And I was like, no, that's actually a feminine trait. Mm-hmm. But some men can be threatened by that and therefore label it as masculine.
Yeah, most men in today's society are threatened by women's masculinity.
Do you think so?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you think about the women that are leaders and we view them as masculine, like a woman like yourself, I view in your daily life are leading your masculine, but then in your home life with your relationship, you probably like to flow into your feminine.
I actually don't think I'd have to kind of think, I think I can switch real quick.
Yeah.
And I think a wise woman can, because you have to know how to manage the energies. Now, if I'm in a setting like this, I'm educating or I'm teaching, I'm in a teacher role, I'm probably going to be less flow.
Yeah.
But I don't know. At the same time, I flow when I do
well,
this.
yours are synergistic because they're both healthy.
Okay.
Right?
Well, I'll go with that.
Yeah. But I think that the women that are, heavily in their masculine, either because they didn't ever have men to lead them, are the women that men describe as too much. You know? So often they're too much. They talk too much, or they have too much emotions. They're leading too much, and those type of women scare most men.
Tell me a little bit more about wounded feminine, and how would you kind of characterize that with, do you work with clients that you see that, or is that something that you're kind of seeing socially right now amongst people that you know?
Yeah, I think wounded feminine ties into a lot of what I described as the problem between nice guy and a good guy. Nice guy always finishes last is something that we've heard, since we were young.
I think that's a load of shit, man. That's
well, I
not
think
true.
It's accurate, because the good guy doesn't finish last, but the nice guy does. Because the nice guy is someone who's in his feminine. He gets walked over. He doesn't lead. He's codependent.
Oh, I like that distinction, actually.
Yeah, because the good guy is, you can be good and humble and have a lot of value and character, but and still have your boundaries.
Well, you know what I tell people? I tell guys this. I'm like, women like good, I guess I should start saying good guy instead of nice guy.
Yeah.
I like the way that you differentiated that. But I say this, they do want a good guy, but they want a little bit of edge as well.
Yeah. It's I've always had this idea to write this book called The Chivalrous Asshole.
Oh, that's a fucking great idea.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's most of the women that I've connected with, I think that's the ideal man to them. They're like, he's strong. You know, it's like guy that's going to open the door for you and smack your ass on the way in. You know, it's
Yeah.
like he's edgy, he's going to banter with you, but he's going to lead and be respectful and chivalrous.
See, and that's the thing because I think guys can go on the extreme end of this when they're getting advice from like the red pill community and they're teaching men how to be in their masculine. What they're doing is they're teaching them how to be an asshole and
Right.
disrespect women. And I'm sorry, but when you do that, you're not going to get a woman that's healed, right? You're
Correct.
going to
Yeah.
get a woman that is probably having some self-esteem issues and is willing to tolerate that bad behavior. But if you're looking for a woman of high value, that's, and I don't want to say that wounded people aren't high value, but if you want to get into a healthy relationship, you can't go in to a relationship and with these kinds of traits and expect it to turn out good and expect it to create love. It's going to fail right off
Yeah.
the jump. And then you're just going to create an unhealthy attachment and here goes the cycle again.
Right, absolutely. It's something that I've, struggled with even in my own relationships is, um, where to cross the boundary of where my energy goes in the masculine and where I need to be reciprocated. And I find that I dance around a careful line there because I don't want to go too far into like a codependent, space where I'm putting so much energy and not getting reciprocation. And I've talked to a lot of women that I've, dated in the past couple of years and explained that to them. And I'm like, the good guy is not, and that knows his worth, is not going to continue trying. The reason that you have all these walls and you keep getting the bad guy is because the narcissist or the male that, wants you for the wrong intention is going to keep trying. He doesn't care. He's just going to keep putting it, energy until he gets what he wants. Where the good guy is gonna be like, oh, I know what I deserve. I'm not going to continue putting energy in.
You're 100% right. I have women talk to. I have a little bit of a different take on that and why people keep repeating the same patterns. Women will come to me all the time. They're like, I keep dating narcissists. I feel like I have a red flag hanging over my head, and I was like, you don't, because that person did the same thing to you, and the girl after you, and the girl before you, and they're doing the same thing. The difference is this: you entertained it. The healthy woman said,
Yeah,
"Get out of
absolutely.
here."
And it's like
She
you're
was
going to
like,
keep
"You're not going to
getting,
do that to me."
yeah, you're going
Yeah.
to keep getting that same exact lesson until you learn.
You know what? The universe is so funny when it comes to stuff like this because I think that you'll keep getting this, like, until you have to master it, right, in order
Yeah.
to move past it. Otherwise, you're going to keep creating it. Like, I learned that with setting boundaries. It's so tough to set boundaries initially, and then I kept facing the same problem. And then finally, once you overcome it, you're like, okay, that lesson, I don't encounter that lesson
Right.
anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't attract it anymore because you've already solved it. Right.
Yeah,
And so many people are
and
aware,
people
but
know
they
better
don't
now.
integrate it. Right. Yeah, they do. Yeah. They like, don't fuck with Jamie.
Evil laugh.
Yeah. But they
That's
don't,
my masculine energy. No, I'm
yeah,
just kidding.
those boundaries. Absolutely. But they don't integrate it. And I think what people don't realize is they might become aware of some of those triggers or some of those issues with, attracting those type of people. But if you don't fully integrate the lesson, you're going to keep attracting, higher level versions of a narcissist. He's going to, all those things that he's going to be wrapped in a different package, and
You're
you're going to
right.
look for those red flags, and those aren't there. He's even, better, you know,
Well, it's I think what happens is it changes, right? Like there's different levels of narcissism. That's actually one of the things that I specialize in is
mhm,
this. And you have a spectrum of narcissism, just like you have a spectrum of empaths. And you get the very like overt narcissists, the ones that are real easy to tell, right? The ones
right.
that are real grandiose. They're like, oh, you made me mad. I hate you. Like
Yeah, yeah.
red pill is a very easy narcissist. You
Yep.
can like easy to point out, easy to solve. But once you starting to get into the political arena, once you starting to get into like the higher cognitive functioning.
Yeah, they're extremely intelligent.
Yeah, once you get into the higher cognitive functioning, I call it more sophisticated narcissists.
Yeah.
And the red flags you saw then, like, oh, was he nice to the waiter? Well, now you have a narcissist that's nice to the waiter,
Yeah.
okay? But they're doing all these other subtle things. And because you're looking for this flag, you don't recognize this
Right.
one.
They create a much deeper level of gaining your trust before they break down the walls, right?
Absolutely, and their targeting is much more sophisticated. Like when you look at like lower functioning narcissists, they don't have as many options as a higher
Right.
functioning one. And so they're more likely to, you'll see more love bombing and more like attaching very quickly,
Yeah.
whereas the other one lets you flow a little bit.
Right.
They can play around with you. But I really, I never actually heard of the wounded feminine. And how would you recommend, like, how does that present? Like, what do you see? What does that actually look like in men?
Yeah, and I think I could talk about that well because I feel like that was me. I
Okay.
think I always had a healthy masculine, but I didn't think I did because I never presented myself in that masculine energy, but the traits were still there. Like I was very humble, I still was a leader, I was clear and on my path, I treated women with respect, but the wounded feminine was very insecure. And that was one of the that's what I feel like one of the biggest things of a wounded feminine, because someone with a strong feminine knows how to set their boundaries, express their needs, communicate healthily, be able to take criticism, whereas in the wounded feminine, you're going to be very insecure.
You're gonna be pretty reactive,
Yeah,
right?
very
Like,
reactive.
yeah, and I feel like you have to, what I see a lot of men do when they're unhealed, okay,
Hmm.
or insecure, because like we all have
Of
insecurities,
course,
right?
yeah.
But there's levels to healing and stuff like this, and being aware, like those things affect how you react. And when you're not healed, you can be very reactive to the world around you,
Yeah.
and you don't know how to manage it, and then you're taking it out on other people, and then you're blaming them for problems, and you can't even see your own ownership in it.
Yeah, you never take ownership of it. You blame
Hmm.
it on someone else. And I mean, for me, like I didn't know how to hold space at all. I mean, that was something that now is
Can
like
you
my
tell
great.
people what that is? I like that you use that. That's like a therapy
Yeah,
term.
yeah, yeah. I mean, holding space. I'll give an example of a time that I noticed my growth in holding space.
Okay.
I had a female that was staying with me for a few weeks, and she had gone through a breakup maybe 6 months before, and the guy kind of caught wind that she was, staying with me, and he reached out. And the biggest thing for that relationship with her was he was never expressive, as most men aren't, because they're not vulnerable. They didn't express. And for someone who, she was like a very spiritual coach. So she was very, I would say a higher value, very connected to her emotions woman, and she needed that. Well, this man called her and started saying all the stuff that she wanted to hear. And so she's at my house and she's having a breakdown because of this, like doesn't know how to feel. And me, I just viewed her as a regular human and calmly like holding space for her emotions, listening to her, comforting her. And I look back and I'm like, wow, where's the jealousy from me? Like how I'm not feeling jealous. I'm like, this is a human that has, real emotions that I can relate to how that would feel.
Well, you know what you did is you made that not about you.
Yeah.
See, what people that are unhealed, or people that are, I guess, in their wounded feminine, as you said, would take an interaction like that, and they would say, "What's wrong with me? Why
Yeah.
am I not good enough? What did I do wrong?" And
Right.
those are the three common questions I'll see men and women
Hmm.
ask when these things really don't have anything to do with you.
Right.
Right. And then we personalize them, and then they become part of our self concept, how we view ourselves. And then,
Yeah.
hello, let's do some more damage to our self
Right.
esteem. Right.
Yeah.
How did you start to make that? Like, how did you recognize that actually? What was like, because in your bio was really interesting to me. I think on
It's
Insta,
new.
is it
Yeah,
new?
it's new because I'm going through an image shift, I would say, right
Are
now.
you?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I kind of want my viewers to know. So we're going to tag and plug your
Yeah, yeah.
Instagram, but your bio said, um, that you were an insecure and suicidal boy turned masculine. And that
Yeah.
really was a very like profound statement, and something that I think, me being a therapist, right? I don't see men oftentimes talk about mental health or struggles that they're facing emotionally. So I thought it was a very brave thing for you
Hmm.
to put out there. And I'm sure that there's a story behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for noting that. I really appreciate it. It's definitely not talked about enough. And the example I always give of how I broke through it is, have you ever seen the movie 8 Mile?
I literally just watched 8 Mile last week.
Perfect. Okay, so
I literally just watched it last week.
Yeah, this is great.
So funny. See, I'm so connected to the
yeah,
universe.
we're aligning right now. In the end of the movie, Eminem, like the whole time he is, having this imposter syndrome throughout the movie, and he's having this lack of vulnerability, even though he knows he's great, he's not putting himself out there. And at the end, he finally breaks through, and in his rap battle, he says everything that is people would view as bad about him, and he hands them the microphone and he says, "Now tell them something they don't already know about me."
I fucking
And
love
when I
that
saw
line.
that, I thought about it a lot, and I made a video in my car, and it went viral. And I just talked about what, the battles I've been going through, and the depression, and the difference between depressed and depression. And that right there was vulnerability to a core. It's like, I'm going to own every part of me. And now you can't take anything away, because the fear with vulnerability is, if they find out, who I really am, are they going to like me? Am I going to be good enough for them? And are they still going to want to connect with me? When really, like, we're so scared of the pain and the trauma, but the trauma is what connects us all. We all can relate to the pain. We all can relate to trauma and trials and tribulations. That's what brings us together.
You know, you said that so beautifully. I think people, you know, I have a different perspective on an angle of that,
Hmm.
where, you know, people that pick at you or try to pull you down in a way, right? Try to maybe pick at you for sharing something about your mental health or a struggle that you face. That a lot of times that's a
Of
projection.
course, yeah.
That really again has nothing to do with you, and it's something that they are personally struggling with. Or it's this: they feel threatened by you
Yeah,
and they have to fault find in order to make themselves feel good.
yeah.
They're like, oh, you know what, this guy's this, or you know what, she's too old, oh, you know what, this. When you meet people like that, it's because they feel threatened by what you're bringing to the table or your potential.
Yeah, I always had this trait, even when I wasn't as secure, that around men that I would view as like I'm looking up to them, or very cool guy men, you know, or very high value men, they would always be threatened by me. In either a way, they would show up as they really wanted to connect with me, or they would start responding poorly. And later I realized it's because I'm just always calm. I have just a calm energy. I don't need to go and flaunt my accomplishments or try to. I already know who I am. I don't need to explain to you how good I am. Why would I need to do that?
Let me like, I like what you just said, and I want to point out this distinction to the viewers, because I hear this in the red pill community that it's like men should not express or show emotion. It's weak to women, and women are not attracted to that. And you just totally uh, like, that's, first of all, that's absolutely terrible advice, and number two, not only is it terrible advice, it's not even true. Okay, women absolutely crave emotional intimacy, which means
Hmm.
that man needs to be emotionally intelligent and attuned to his own emotions and to hers, and that's a huge sign of a healthy relationship, and you're going to get way better sex when you do that too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, number two, like, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Where was I going with
I think we
this?
were talking about my not need to express my accomplishments and
Right.
having a calm energy around this.
Right,
Yeah.
the calm energy. That's right. Thank you. That's the part about emotional control. See, the thing is that women absolutely want emotional vulnerability, okay? But they also want a man to have emotional control.
Right.
That's the difference, guys. It's the emotional control. It's not that you can't express emotion or be vulnerable. And look, guess what? You want the same thing from your girl, right? It's not
Yeah.
just a male female thing. Like, you don't want her like throwing your clothes and lighting them on
Right.
fire every time she's pissed at you,
And
right?
and saying that's just spicy.
I say that about myself.
You're right.
Maybe I should
It's always, you know, if you grew up in chaos, you're like, I need that a little
I'm
bit. You know?
spacey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I call that my internal filter. It's
Oh,
that
okay.
it's reacting versus responding. So the information comes in,
Yeah.
and most people, it hits and it comes right back out. It's reactive.
Yeah.
For me, my information comes in, I think about it, I put myself in the other person's shoes, which is empathy, and then I think, how do I want to respond? And I choose to respond. I'm in control of how I respond to it. You know, a good example of this is if someone were to say a bunch of hateful things to you in another language, it would have no effect on your emotions.
Oh, I like that.
But
Yeah.
in English, it's not the words, it's the attachment that we have to it. Like a friend today, you know, he responded very irrationally to a comment that he got on social media. And I'm
Hmm.
like, the only reason you responded to that is because you actually thought what he said was true.
It's so true. That's a big thing, that's a big problem that happens, is what belief system are you attaching to somebody?
Yeah,
See, like, I could have many people say that I'm a shit therapist, but if I don't believe it, it doesn't have an effect on me. Now,
right.
if somebody comes along and says something that maybe I haven't healed from, I might be tempted to believe that, and then I might be more reactive. And that's how things that's why healing's so important, is because it really kind of colors how we see things and how we interact with
Yeah,
people.
absolutely. And kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier about how people respond, am I good enough? Is the example that I use is you could be, I'm an orange, obviously I have orange hair, but like, you know, you could be an orange and the person that you're talking to just likes apples. It doesn't mean you're
Oh my
not a good
God,
enough
stop.
orange. It doesn't mean that you're not bright enough. It just means they like apples, and there's nothing wrong with that. But men are so entitled to thinking every woman must like me. If I send a DM, she needs to respond to me.
Right. You know, it's so, we're so synergetic right now. I can't even tell you, because I use this with apples and bananas.
Oh, do you?
I literally say that analogy. I was like,
Yeah.
is he really going here right now?
No
I
way.
literally say that with my clients. Yeah. Because my point's very similar to yours. What I will say is, look, like, there's nothing inherent. Like, if you're picking an apple over a banana, it's not because there's something bad with the fruit. It's not because bananas are bad. You can make beautiful things for it. And
Yeah.
for some people, it's their favorite fruit. But if you prefer an apple, that's just your preference. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with an apple or a banana. It's just,
Yeah.
this is what you
Exactly.
pick.
And that
This is
should be
what you
okay.
like.
right?
Well, it should be okay, but what people will do is they'll be like, the banana over here will be like, but I'm not an apple. What's wrong with me? And
Yeah.
it's like, nothing's wrong with you.
Don't
See,
you want someone who wants a banana? Yeah.
absolutely. Like, yeah, Banana Foster, right? Like,
Right.
it's like amazing. I don't like apple pie personally, but
Really?
I
That's
don't.
not
I'm not a
good.
big
I
pie
feel like I
person.
think that's sociopathic, maybe.
Maybe
You know?
I might be. Maybe I'm not far from it. I don't know. I'm sure I'm on a spectrum of something
Yeah,
somewhere.
we all are for sure.
We all have something, don't
But I
we?
think a higher level of like your growth is also understanding that you might not be at the level of orange that that person needs. And I think
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people should start there. They need to start at the apples and oranges. But, you might not be healed enough for this person. Even in my dating scene, I notice I'm like, before I was not healed enough. And often now I'm like, oh, I've done too much work for some of these women. Like,
Yeah.
and that's a weird thing to say.
I don't think it's weird. Like I can really relate to that. Like when you're like equality in the sense of emotional intelligence and an understanding of what your needs are is really important, because when you've done a certain level of work, there's no tolerance for certain behaviors, right? You're
Yeah.
no longer in a place where I think you have less tolerance to be the teacher. Like
Right.
I always tell women, and I advise them, you don't want to date your kid. Right?
Yeah.
Because
Don't be a mommy.
a
Yeah.
lot of women are like, let me just raise him, let me help him, let me nurture him into this. And I'm like, don't do that. Like, who wants to fuck their kid?
Yeah. And they're going to
Nope.
get resentment and they're going to lose attraction to someone that
They
is in their
will.
feminine.
They will.
Yeah.
They will. And honestly, like I think guys that do that and allow that for women, and you can tell me what you think about this, are maybe not that into her. Because a lot of cause hear me out, because a lot of men that are really into a woman, it's really hard to let a woman do for them.
Hmm.
They're almost really out of their own energy when a woman's, let's say, paying for dinner or doing all these things. Like, it's hard for them when they're really in love with somebody to let them take on that role.
Yeah.
Now, I would say that I have to kind of give that as a generalization. Of course, there's always like exceptions to the
Right.
rule where it doesn't play out that way. But what do you think about that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. But I think the key thing you said was they're out of their energy. They are not in their masculine at all. And I don't know that they necessarily recognize that they are not attracted to that trait because they've never been someone who is in their masculine at all. They've never been leading. It's like, I mean, if you were able to, why would you not want to be a man that leads? But in today's society, they don't even understand what that means.
I let's talk a little bit about what that means to lead,
Yeah.
because I agree with you. I think that just because you're a guy doesn't make you a natural born leader.
No, absolutely not.
Right.
And I think that with masculinity, there's many ways that you can, provide. I think
Mhm.
we focus so much on the hot topic of money, and it's
Mhm.
not just the only way to provide. And then on the other side, there's so many women that are more on, I guess, feminine agenda that think that it's like you're purchasing a woman almost.
I know.
And it's like it's not how it's supposed to be. But there are traits like that, and some people want that. And I think let people do what they want to do. If that's like for me, I don't want a woman that's just going to be a trophy wife, and there's men that do, but I want a woman that has a purpose that she wants to go after, but I have the ability to provide for her so she doesn't have this feeling of lack and having to be in her masculine to provide for herself.
Mhm.
Her feminine gets to be the strongest version of herself in this beautiful creation of a goddess if she doesn't have to worry about providing and she gets to feel safe and she's like, okay, what do I want to do with my life?
I had a guy on here. I was telling you about him earlier,
Uh-huh.
and we kind of danced around this topic a little bit. And he told me, well, I had told him that I can't remember if this was on camera or off camera, that I had always wanted my own life for myself, that I had a purpose and I was connected to my purpose. And it was outside the role of being a mother and a wife. It was
Yeah,
outside
yeah.
of that role. And he literally did not believe me. He legit didn't believe me, and he told
Wow.
me that no, that couldn't possibly be true. And I told him, I said it absolutely is. Like, I remember having dreams as a child, doing things, and I don't want to share them publicly
Yeah.
here. 'Cause
But does he think that in kindergarten when they ask, what do you want to be when you grow up, that women all naturally should have said mothers,
yeah, like
essentially?
I didn't pick his brain on it too much because I was kind of exhausted by the end of the
Right.
conversation,
That's
to be honest
draining.
with you. But there are a lot of men that think that that is a woman's only purpose. Oh, and I said that to him actually, and he really nagged me on the, oh, why are you speaking down? Why are you saying only? And I said, no, you're assigning a negative meaning. You're assigning a negative meaning to the word only. There's nothing wrong with women that want to be stay-at-home moms and raise a family and be a wife. I always said I wanted to be a wife more than I wanted to be a mom. There's nothing wrong with that, but I had something other than that as well. And I don't assign a negative meaning to the word other.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing with me is I typically date women that are more in their masculine because I like the power couple kind of role. But I want her to be able to choose.
But isn't there like a big difference between masculine traits and a masculine energy, like a dominant energy force?
For sure.
Because I think we have to kind of create that narrative, because I would say that I'll take myself for an example because I don't have other women here, but I have to use myself as the guinea pig. I would say that I definitely, when I can bounce out in and out so quickly.
Yeah, no, I think when you're with a healthy masculine partner, you're going to be more in your feminine. But in the outside world, I mean, you're helping other people, you're having to hold the boundaries, you're having to create your own.
Like with clients, I have to have a lot of boundaries, firm boundaries, and I'm not I'm nice and I'm pleasant, and I would say that I'm feminine, but I'm more dominant in my energy of don't fuck with me and don't like cross this line.
Yeah, and I'm sure your partner was attracted to that you already had your own path.
I will tell you this, he absolutely loves the fact that I've got my own thing going on, and he loves how independent I am, believe it or not. And let me tell you this, we have very traditional roles.
Yeah,
we have a very traditional people I don't actually think anybody that knows me would be surprised by that, but at home, like, it's just, I am doing like the majority of the cooking and the cleaning, and I don't mind. But let me tell you what, he helps me.
Yeah.
And we provide for each other in different ways. He does more financially and stuff like that. But I like, it works. It's balance, I think, is the key. But it's an ebb and a flow. But I will tell you this, I can only be in that state with a masculine man.
Yeah, of course.
I would not be able to do that if a man was not. Because I've dated men that have been more in their feminine energy, and I do turn into the dude, and I hated it.
Yeah.
And I absolutely hated it, and I did end up being resentful. I dated a guy with he was here on a visa. Okay.
Yeah.
He's here on a visa.
So you were the 90-day fiance.
What's so weird is my current boyfriend is here on a visa as well. But
noticing a trend here. Is this like it's like the fear of commitment for some?
Maybe that's where it started.
No, it's not. I'm sure it's not.
I hope not. I'm like, psychoanalyze me. No, but he was here on a visa, and so he didn't have a lot of stability in his life.
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of the transporting, and this is a really dumb example, but I was resentful that I had to pick him up.
It's not dumb. It makes sense.
I was really resentful, and I was like, I don't want to pick him up. And of course, he has a good reason to not have a car and to not drive. But in my mind, I was out of my energy, and I was like, first of all, I hate driving. I want somebody to drive me. I like to, because I don't know where I'm going half the time, and I get lost really easily, and it scares me. So I like that, to fall back and let somebody take me somewhere. So the fact that I had to be in that like more high alert state, I 100% lost attraction for him over that.
Yeah. It's such a small thing, but it was the big thing. And I think
for me it was. Yeah.
But it carries on into other places in the relationship. And I think something that's different between me and the red pill people is that they think it's like the role is absolute, where it's like, I think I want my partner to be passenger princess, but she's like, hey, I want to drive today. I'm like, go for it.
Yeah.
I want her to be in traditional role, but if she has this huge dream and goal she wants to go after, go for it. It's the ability that she can choose and not have to be, in her masculine.
Well, I think we put like labels of bad on it too.
Absolutely.
Like, what on earth is wrong with a woman having a career being a boss bitch?
They're scared of them being more powerful, I think. Like they're intimidated.
I feel like it is too. Now, I think that it can be really harmful for that to be a woman's predominant energy. I think she needs to know how to flow and fall back, okay? And I actually don't think most women are trying to be that. They've had to do that for a survival, most likely.
Yeah.
That's kind of what that's rooted in. And that's something that they have to heal and work on as well. So there's responsibility on that ownership as well. But I think that most men prefer a woman, most guys that are relationship minded are looking for partnership and not just somebody they have to take care of.
Yeah, and I've seen that show up a lot with women that I've dated, since a lot of them have been more in their masculine.
Hmm.
And, I'll be like, little things like, hey, we're going on a trip. I'm like, oh, I already booked everything and, planned it all. And they're
Yeah.
like, what? It's like the
Yeah.
smallest things, or, it's the wording. I think I made a post about it today on my Instagram. It's like, text your girl and say, hey, I plan a night for us. I'm picking you up at 8. I
That's
can't wait
such a
to see
turn
you.
on for
Yeah.
so many women. Like,
And-
I can't even tell you if they like you. If you're
right,
if
right.
they're not
Yeah.
interested in you guys, please don't do
Yeah.
that.
You have to know your partner,
Yeah.
or the person that you're like, I'm going to respond or initiate communication in different ways with different people. With someone else, I might say, hey, I really want to try this new restaurant. I would love for you to join me. Or someone else, I'm like, I'm going to pick you up at 8. You have to really know who you're talking to. And I wrote another too, like, hey, if you have the resources, send her money to go pick out an outfit for you. She would love that. But it's not about resources. You can still make her feel loved and taken care of and seen, just by your words, just by you wanting to, plan something for her. If you don't have money, you can go, you can make food. I mean, when I was younger, I made food and took this girl up on a little hill for like sunset.
Yeah, that's
like
awesome.
just take initiative.
Look, emotional intelligence is highly underrated for men, and it's not something that they're educated on a lot. Do you know how many men I work with where I have to talk to them about feeling words?
Yeah.
And that's not a knock on them. They like when I would try to talk to them about how they're feeling, they didn't even have the language
Right.
to tell me how they were feeling about something. And so we were really, and that makes me so sad because there's so much discrimination for men getting mental health help.
Right.
Where they're shamed or seen as weak, and that's reinforced.
Yep.
So often than not. I had some dude comment on my Instagram when I was talking about men's mental health, and I was challenging the red pill on something.
Okay.
And somebody rocks up in my fucking comments, keyboard
Keyboard
warrior.
warrior, yeah.
Yeah.
With no profile picture.
Yeah, it was 013 user 567. Yeah. And said that of course why would you listen to anybody that's going to a therapist and getting
Yeah.
help? And it's just like, you know what, this is exactly like, here they are trying to work on something, right? And I'm giving feedback from my own professional experience and what I've seen happen and actually play out. And it's just like, man, this is what guys get.
Mm-hmm.
This is what guys get. Like, shame on you for getting help. Just figure this shit out on your own.
Yeah, it's been that way for so long, and it's on both sides. There's in movies, there's women that are making men look weak for crying or expressing emotions, and then we're always taught to just bottle it in. That's what we're taught: just suck it up and be the man, and be strong. And the way that I actually shifted my mindset on vulnerability, aside from the 8 Mile example, was I was talking to this guy that was a Navy SEAL, and he explained to me that vulnerability is one of the biggest parts in their teams.
Really?
Yeah, because they said, how do I know how to help you if I don't know what's going on? So someone who's not vulnerable, we can't be a part of the team because you can't communicate. If you're not on your A game today, I need to know so I know how to help you, or else we're all going to die. It's the same thing in a relationship. You have to be able to be vulnerable, and just saying little things as, the way you said this makes me feel. Like you said, talking about how you feel was such a big thing. I never knew how to do that.
Yeah. And when we talk about vulnerability, I want to change what that actually looked like. It's not a guy crying in the corner losing his shit.
Right.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about emotional intelligence. We're talking about sharing your feelings and being able to communicate those feelings with their partner, but also having emotional control, but being able to express your emotions.
Right.
And that does include crying.
Yeah, no, yeah,
okay?
it's definitely not crying. Yeah, I think the guys that are not vulnerable, they have like a shield around them. I picture like a knight in shining armor, except it's not a good thing because they have this shield where they're like, their inner child is inside this man of a knight, and they're not allowing any of themselves to be. Whereas a guy that's vulnerable is just standing strong as their man, as their human.
I'll tell you what, I feel safe around a guy that is in emotional control, but also vulnerable. I feel safe. It calms my energy down. When I feel like I can see these guys a mile away.
Right.
And you know what they look like to me? This is literally what I picture in my head, these alpha males that say that they're alpha males, but I don't know any alpha male that ever has to say that they're an alpha male, is, you didn't give me that's what I picture in my mind. And I know that's like a funny way to say it, but that's literally what I
It is
see
true,
is
yeah.
somebody throwing an adult temper tantrum
Hmm.
because somebody was mean to them or somebody didn't agree with them and they didn't get what they want. And what they have is an ego injury.
Yeah,
They
that's
have an
true.
ego injury, and what they're trying to do is repair that. And they do that by bumping themselves up or bumping you down.
Right. Yeah. And something you said there about the alpha thing is no secure man needs to tell you that he's a secure man or tell you anything about what he is.
This is like such a new thing that I'm hearing. Like everybody's going around, I'm an alpha, I'm an alpha. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
when did this happen?
yeah, I know. It's very
It's the
strange.
weirdest thing. Like, I don't. I just I just don't get it. It's so silly to me. And if you have to lead with that, you're certainly not. You're certainly not. And if you have to, the way that look, respect is such an important part of a relationship, and respect goes two ways.
Hmm.
Women need to respect the men that they are with,
Yeah.
okay? But the same goes back. If it's one-sided, you're not in a healthy relationship. It's lopsided. And that absolutely makes it prone to become abusive or really unhealthy, or you can get trauma bonds. Like all kinds of funky stuff can happen when you don't have the balance and the reciprocity.
Right.
And like, what's wrong with respecting your partner? Like, why is
Nothing.
that
Yeah.
even like, why is that so threatening to some people?
Yeah. And I always use this term that you need the 4 L's. You need to love your partner, like your partner, long for your partner, and lust for your partner.
Oh, I love that.
Because you can have, so many people can love their partner and not like their partner. I
Mhm.
mean, I feel like you're so many, and women always stay longer, even though when they recognize the issue, they always stay longer and they're in that space. Like, I don't even like and respect my partner anymore, but I still love them. And I can relate because in my last relationship, uh, I got all of my information as far as relationships from movies. Like, I was, I was the king of the friend zone in high school. Like, I never had, partners, which ended up being the biggest blessing. I mean, almost always the thing that we view as a negative or dark ends up being our biggest blessing because that's how I learned how to understand women, how to listen, understand their emotions and be able to eventually hold space for them. But in the movies, they portray this hallmark thing where the man like loves the partner more than anything else in the world. And I
Mhm.
thought, and that's what I did. I would change my schedule around for the woman. I would do everything. I mean, I was so focused on loving her. And then towards the end, she's like, that's the problem. And I was like, what? I didn't
Mhm.
understand. And then I'm like, I didn't realize how much I was like, I loved you more than I loved myself because I didn't love myself. And I was
Yeah.
so codependent.
Mhm.
And
That's a really powerful reflection, and I think a lot of men are going to benefit from your openness around that. Like when you say that you were codependent, what did that kind of look like for you?
well, the biggest example I always get or I recognize was if I already had this day planned, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'm gonna see her tonight, or maybe she's gonna be free. I'm like, I'm gonna cancel everything just in case.
Mm.
There was no, I'm independent myself. It's like I need her validation.
It's well, it sounds like you were putting everybody else's needs above you,
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
and your needs really came last.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I didn't love myself. I didn't,
Mhm.
I think a lot of people will tell themselves that, oh, I love to be, put everyone first, but you're not doing that on purpose. You're saying that's how you are, but it's because you don't value yourself enough,
I
which
I
then goes around to the boundaries, right?
I agree with you 100%. I think people that do that are people that I hear people say this to me all the time. I'm just too nice. And I'm like, no, you're not. It's not that you're too nice. It's just you need people to like you.
Yeah, you need the validation.
Yeah.
Is where did we go wrong that we need everyone to like us and we need to all be inclusive and we can't stand up for ourselves? And when I learned to do the boundaries, because people are so scared because they're like, oh, they're going to be mad at me, or even the smallest things like I can't come to dinner, and you don't need to explain yourself.
I love that. Like I'm the fucking boundary queen, man.
Yeah.
I am the boundary queen. I'm skilled at setting boundaries and I teach people how to do it for sure. But boundaries are risky because every time you set a boundary, you always run the risk of losing the relationship. That's just the fact of the matter and you need to radically accept and embrace that. But here's the
But
trick.
why is that a risk?
Well, it's not a risk for me per se, because this is how I look at it.
Okay.
It's a risk for other people because they want the relationship.
Hmm.
See, I look at that and I'm like, if I set a boundary and you don't respect
It's a
that
filter.
boundary, I'm like, you just saved me years of
Yeah,
heartbreak. That's how
absolutely.
I look at it because
Yeah.
I know how that rolls. I know how that plays out when I don't set boundaries. So I'm never going down that road again. So for me, it's just kind of like, oh, well, let's just get this out of the way now. Like if you're not cool with this, like let's just not waste our time, you
Yeah.
know? and always very upfront about that. But people are scared of losing relationships, especially if it's somebody that they've, like a romantic partner,
Yeah.
right?
Or something that's been long term.
Exactly. And so I can understand why there's a lot of fear and resistance and the desire, the temptation to not set boundaries. But if you don't set boundaries, what you're doing is you're not being authentic to yourself, and now you're making agreements, and now you're teaching people how to treat you. You're teaching them that, hey, I'll tolerate this. Hey, what I said here doesn't matter. And then you're the one that's going to be really miserable. And then before you know it, you're going to be in a room full of people that you don't know and you don't like.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's far better to be alone.
Yeah.
It's far better to be alone than to be in relationships like that.
Right.
And like, if all you have to do, like, how exhausting would those relationships be too? If like, I have to make you happy, I have to make you happy, I have to make you happy,
Right.
I have to, like, get the fuck out of here, man. I don't want
Yeah.
anything to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, even asking the question to someone like, what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
My dad always told me, choose your friends, don't let your friends choose you. And I never really resonated with that until later, which is that. It's like, I'm going to choose the people that I want around me. And I've seen that show up more now. When I moved to Vegas, people often told me, watch out for people in Vegas. There's a lot of snakes, there's this or that. And they, describe people in Vegas with more of a negative connotation to protect yourself. And I always explain to them that I'm not fearful of that at all, because the growth that I've had and the energy that I have, I will not attract that in my life. And I haven't. I've attracted more amazing people in the year that I've been in Vegas than in any other time. And that's not indicative of Vegas. It's indicative of the growth that I've had. Because people that are not secure, or those narcissists or people that are insecure, they're not even going to want to be around me. My energy will be too much for them, not in a negative way, but it's like, I can't play that guy,
I know. I feel like when you've, and like, I don't know if anybody ever gets completely healed and whole, because I think,
don't think they do.
that's another thing that I think is kind of hard, because I talk about healing a lot, and it's like, well, do you ever reach a place of complete healing? I think you can overcome things as you go.
Yeah.
But I don't, and I think things can like affect you less, but we're always in relationships with people, and somebody's
Yeah.
usually going to do something that's probably going to be like, oh yeah, that kind of stung a little bit, and guess what? Now you have some more work to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a really common misconception that's unfortunately expressed too often on social media, that you need to do your healing before you get into another relationship, and
Yes.
the reason that that's such an issue is, where do traumas and triggers come from? From relationships. So yes, you can become aware and you can start to become more secure in your single time, but there's not this thing, oh, I'm going to wait 2 years for me to heal myself. You could wait 2 years and you have all the same fucking problems. When you get back in relations, you need to
Yeah.
be triggered again to see if you actually have healed from that. And then you also need a partner who will hold space for your triggers. When I go into a new relationship, I know what my issues are that are from lingering, and I know that if I haven't completely healed them in a new relationship, they're still going to be there a little bit.
I think that's a beautiful way to put that. I think that, I think relationships can also be healing.
Oh,
Okay.
100%.
I think that you can find a partner that just fucking heals that part of you. That's
Yeah.
just like, like I know that a relationship really helped me with self-esteem, because I had been so broken down from a narcissistic relationship.
Mhm.
And then my next one ended up building me up so much. And that I don't know if I could have certainly gotten there and was certainly doing my own work, but that certainly put the cherry on the,
Yeah, right.
the icing on the cake. And I was like, okay, I don't look like this demon under the bridge,
Right.
or like I'm not this horrible person that they say I am. Like, it gives you, like, these relationships you have with people provide a counterbalance from some of the stuff that you've been through, and be like, okay, like maybe, wow, and
Yeah.
it just heals, it heals a part of you. It's not everything, but people can heal parts of you, and then you can heal parts of you. And you're never responsible for the things that happen to you, but you're 100% responsible for how you manage it.
100%.
Like, even though we get triggered in relationships, like, we still need to be growing and evolving and constantly working on that. Like, I don't like it when people use the excuse of a trigger
Right.
either. I don't like that, because that can be weaponized and be like, well, that's my trigger. My
Yeah.
trigger. Okay,
That's
well,
not
they know
owning
your
your
trigger.
shit.
It's still your responsibility to manage
Yeah.
your trigger. Also, if you know it's your trigger, what are you doing putting yourself in that situation?
Right.
So there's a mutual respect and responsibility that has to occur in these relationships. And
Yeah.
and we have to be careful about weaponizing it, or people weaponizing our own healing journey against us as well.
Right. And I think relationships are not all meant to be for the rest of our life. You know,
Mm.
some people are just for, you know, in your book of life, they're for one line, one page, one chapter. And some of those are beautiful. Some of the relationships I had that were only 3 months were so there for a purpose. And I look at every relationship, whether it was a positive or negative, you know, viewed relationship, and all of them offer growth. Even if you had a terrible relationship, that might be the one that gave you all, for you to find all your strength, right?
Mhm.
You know, and everyone is different. And I think, you know, something that I learned in a past relationship that I think men don't realize is I was told that I was controlling, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Doesn't even align with, you know, my codependency and all these other things and my anxious attachment style.
Your partner told you that you were controlling?
Correct. And then
Okay.
when I was in therapy, I, you know, kind of extrapolated that further and realized it was in the simplest thing. Like she had told me that she wanted to do this new job. And in my mind, as a man, I'm thinking in like my logical state, I'm like, that doesn't align with you at all. I don't think that would be a good path. And I'm just explaining that to her. And in that little thing, that was controlling when what I should have said is, hey, you know, I'm not sure if that's the best fit for you, but I completely support you and want you to try it.
Mhm. You know, that's like the language, right?
Yeah,
Like the language can make a big difference. You know, women are really, they have to watch out for power and control dynamics just
yeah.
because the men are, you know, typically the stronger sex physically.
Hmm.
And so that's something that I think is always on a woman's mind. So when they see these control like behaviors or something that can touch like that, a lot of women will have a threat response to that
Right.
or no longer feel safe around that
Yeah.
person.
In the man's mind, he's like, oh, I'm just thinking about what's best. Like they're like, oh, this in their logical mind, this doesn't make sense
Yeah.
for you. But it's who are you to choose that?
Well, you know, and I just kind of thought of this. This might be slightly off topic, but hello, welcome to my brain.
Right.
You know, tell me what you think about this. You know, I think masculinity is often shown as aggression.
Mm.
I like when I see like images of masculinity, I think of somebody with a
Vikings
gun,
or like
somebody that's
Viking. Yeah.
yeah, Viking, somebody that's like, you know, like super physically fit or something like that. And I think that those are really common images of masculinity, and I think that that gets really misinterpreted for aggression,
Yeah.
where men are now being they're presenting with aggression in order to portray themselves as masculine.
Right. I think you're absolutely right on that. It's a masculine appearing is what I like to claim, and not to get confused with like, you know, LGBTQ community masculine appearing, but it shows up in that way because there's a lot of very healthy masculine teachers in our space, and I really see them more in like the spiritual space, like Aubrey Marcus and people in that space. But a lot of them are not what you view as masculine appearing, and that was one of the big drivers that made me want to start speaking out about it more is because I like to take all life as reality. The universe is what it is, and you just have to play the cards that are dealt with the universe or our earth that we're on. And you know, a big portion of the country, unfortunately, is not going to listen to a guy, even if he has all the right answers for them. They're not going to listen to a guy that doesn't look like that masculine appearing. You know, if he's wearing like some very loose spiritual clothing and some big circle hat, they're going to be like, they're going to, you know, use a very derogative term for him to be appearing feminine. That's not true at all. But unfortunately, you just have to deal with that. And it's like, okay, so I'm going to step up as the more masculine, what they would call alpha appearing. But then I'm talking about emotions and I'm talking about, hey, you need to talk about how you feel. And they're like,
And you're
huh,
doing that so that they
how
can
can I,
see,
maybe
hear
I
your
should think about
message.
that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I do think it's tough to be a guy. I think that there are a lot of challenges men face that women don't face, you know, and vice versa. But I like what you said about the source of, because also like on the flip side to that, a lot of these alpha appearing males are not really giving masculine advice
No,
either.
it's super
Right.
wounded. Yeah, it's not
Right.
healthy at all.
Right. And honestly, when I hear a lot of them, especially in the red pill community, like I said, child temper tantrum comes to my mind. And none of that none of that appears safe to me. None of that appears protective either. I'm
Right,
just like, oh fuck, I need to run away from this guy. This guy's a loose cannon.
right. But how
Yeah.
many women get attracted to men that they're just confident and loud, right?
Well, I think women do like loud is going to be noticed.
Right.
Okay, so not necessarily attraction. It's just what's noticed.
Hmm.
And women do like social cues. They do like status. They do like these things. So we're
Right.
not going to say that that doesn't exist. It does, but these are these are traits that are attractive but not necessarily
Yeah,
masculine.
they're misconstrued though. I mean, a lot of the guys that are loud and very and confident appearing are the least bit secure. But our images of, you know, I think about like in high school, those guys that were the most confident and loud. It's just they were just projecting or covering up all their insecurity. And I think that shows up a lot in today's society, and why people that are those red pill appearing, or some of the men that we've talked about that all these people are listening to. It's like, if you're just very confident and are very absolute, which I think anybody who speaks in anything in absolute is someone you should run away from. But then they listen. People listen to loud.
They do. It definitely attracts a lot of attention. What do you think is like, we're going to kind of come to a close here,
Yeah.
but I wanted to ask kind of a final question. And what do you think, let's see, what do you think the biggest misconception is about masculinity? I'm going to ask you two questions.
That's a great question. The biggest misconception about masculinity, I think what you said there previously is the appearance of it. Like a man doesn't need to appear to be masculine to be masculine. And I also think we attach masculinity right now the most to just financial providing, when that's not necessarily true at all. I mean, there's a factor in that, but I think in today's society, it's not as easy for a man to be completely financially providing in traditional roles. I mean, the 1% of the world's average salary is $35,000 a year for the entire world. And it's just not as possible in today's society. I mean, people are going to have to go back and forth. So I think veering away from the masculinity being just financially providing, and it's just him making you feel safe, him having clarity on his path, him leading, him being able to listen and actually integrate and hear you respectfully, and just protecting you.
Well, I think that those are some really wonderful insights. Why don't you tell everybody, you have a product too as well that you brought with you, if you want to kind of share what this is.
So this is my brand, Microbloom, that I started about a year ago. And essentially it's a psilocybin microdose. It has 3 other adaptogens in it: lion's mane, cordyceps, and reishi, and then a little bit of psilocybin. And psilocybin has been incredible for mental health, for anxiety, depression, essentially. And when they do brain scan of our brain waves, there's big dips and valleys in our brain waves, and that's where thoughts get caught up, and that's where people stick in these cycles of depression, anxiety, and it's because there's these big mountains and these big valleys. Essentially, when psilocybin is taken, the brain waves, the field flattens, and that allows for new thoughts to come and breakthroughs to come. So psilocybin has been such an amazing tool for myself and hundreds of people that we've been able to change their lives from PTSD, getting off SSRIs, getting off anxiety medication. So we have an Instagram page, micro.bloom, that we have a lot of resources and education on psilocybin.
Awesome. And tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, so my Instagram is shredded gingy. I'm still not a fan. I'm still not a fan of the name, but my entire life I was made fun of for being a ginger, and I would dye my hair all these colors.
Okay.
And when I was about 21 years old, I finally said, fuck it. I'm just going to own it. And I changed my name to Shredded Gingy, and all my friends were like, holy shit. And now it's been the biggest blessing. People will meet me once and remember me for years because it's so unique. You don't see a lot of gingers too much anymore.
Well, I think that's kind of what you were saying, earlier about kind of taking that back, kind of what Eminem did in 8 Mile, right? Just tell me something that I don't know or that I haven't said, right?
And those things that you take control of, that you were so scared to express, ended up so many times being your biggest light, and the thing that people find so amazing, incredible about you.
I absolutely agree with that. I think your pain parts are really these are the the pain parts will do one of two things. They're going to destroy you, or they're going to catapult you into your destiny. And it's how you respond that makes the difference, because not everybody wants to ride that wave, and it's about overcoming your environment, and it's about overcoming the emotion, because we all have it, and well, let me thank you so much for being part of Pink Pill. I could have talked to you about so many other things, but we only have an hour. We didn't even get into depressed versus this, and I was damn it, man.
Well, I want to thank you so much for letting me be on here and be an opportunity to be on Pink Pill, and thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I mean, you're such a light in this world, and obviously a light worker and empath that is showing women how they can be strong and take back their power and set boundaries, and putting it right into the men that they're not always right. There's so much misinformation out there, and I think what you're doing is incredible.
Oh, thank you. Usually it's me giving the summaries, but fuck, I'm going to end it on that note.
Awesome.
Thank you guys so much. Until next time, pop the pink pill.